Anyway, I'm Jody. I'm Myron's campaign manager, and I've been raising hell since I was 14 years old. Back when I was a freshman in high school, there was a thing called Channel 1 that came to our school. And basically what that was is giving free schools, or free TVs to schools in exchange for a program that was half news and half commercials. And the commercials were for things that make 15-year-olds feel even worse about themselves than they already do. So it was, you know, beauty products, whatever. And it felt wrong to me. And this was before the internet. This was before there was an easy way to connect, but I found this organization called Unplug, and they helped me figure out a way to write a letter to my school board. They figured out a way for me to look at the school budget and decide that we had our own money for TVs. And I took on my entire school district with a one-girl boycott. I told them that I would boycott every day until I graduated, and that would be a goddamn long time. And I won. So they had to come and collect their TVs back. And trust me, I was not popular among the students who liked having the 20 minutes of crap before the teachers got to talk. But I was this kid in Stanley, Wisconsin. My parents are not political people, and suddenly I'm getting a call from the Wall Street Journal. And I talked to them. My parents are like, okay, we've got this daughter who gets George magazine, if you remember what that was. It was JFK Jr.'s magazine. I was 12 years old getting this. Anyway, one day I get a call from Hightower's program. And I'm like, who is this? Texas? And I remember doing the interview in my kitchen on a rotary dial phone with my parents wondering, what has she done now? And it was this amazing experience, and I have to show you this because this is the cassette tape of my interview. And there's this letter that he wrote with it, and I want to read it because it means something to me now. It's short. Dear Jody, thanks for joining us this weekend on Hightower Radio. You were a great addition to the show, and I appreciate your spending so much time with us, which makes me wonder if I talked a lot. I hope we get a chance to talk again. Keep up your good work. And then Jim wrote, you did a superb job. I enjoyed talking with you. Best of luck. And the keep up the good work part resonates with me because I'm coming full circle now to this campaign, and this has been the most honest, good work that I have ever done. This campaign embodies everything you want. It's real, it's grassroots. I feel like we have a real shot of winning this thing, and I feel confident in promising, you know, when Jim said keep up the good work, I think I have. I've been, you know, this campaign's been a fight from the beginning. When you take on an incumbent with 18 years and $2 million, and you've got a small budget and you've got a small staff, there's only one thing that wins, and that's people and that's heart. And I think that we have those things, and I don't think Ron Kind has that kind of support on his side. And I feel a momentum building, and I am just so proud to be part of this campaign. So I want to introduce to you our candidate for the 3rd Congressional District in Wisconsin, Myron Buchholz.
Hello everyone, my name is Amanda Buchholz. My father, Myron Buchholz, is running for Congress in Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District. After I graduated high school in Wisconsin, I went to West Point and then served 11 years in the United States Army, including 27 months in Iraq. My family has always been an unwavering source of support. From the day I left, my mom wrote frequently, and she quickly mastered the art of the deployment care package. My dad has written me a letter every single week for over a decade. I can't begin to describe how important these letters are to me, but I can show you. I've saved all of them. When my dad announced his run for Congress, some folks in the media called him a self-described peace activist, as if they weren't quite sure what that meant. Let me tell you what it means to a soldier and a daughter with a peace activist back at home when you are deployed to a war zone 7,000 miles away. It means someone is willing to ask the tough questions of the lawmakers that sent you to war. It means that somebody has the courage to ask out loud why we even went to war in the first place. And it means that somebody is working to bring you home. It is said that no one loves peace more than a soldier, except perhaps the parent of that soldier. This election, you have a chance to vote for someone who will never send your son or daughter to war unnecessarily. That someone is my father, Myron Buchholz. I hope you will vote for him on August 9th. Thank you.
That's a tough one to watch. I've seen it a handful of times. I stood in my kitchen when it was being shot. You have to know that my daughter is pretty type A. And over the course of my relationship with her, when things cannot go well, there can be some reaction. So I am pacing back and forth in my kitchen, listening to her say, "We're going to do it again, we're going to do it again, we're going to do it again." And I kept thinking, we got a good one, we got a good one, we got a good one. And finally, she thought she nailed it and said, "We're good to go." You can tell I'm pretty proud of my daughter. She is separated from the military now, thank goodness. She separated from military not because she didn't want to serve her country. She separated from her military because our politicians will use soldiers up and throw them away without regard to what happens to them. They will deploy them over and over and over again. We've had Marines deployed 9 times. I've stood on too many peace corners and had too many people comment and say, "Well, you know, your daughter volunteered." And my response was, "For how many tours?" She did 3. 27 months in Baghdad, 15 of them during the bloodiest months of the war. She wasn't a trigger puller. She survived unscathed. She has friends and classmates who are not so lucky. And I have a soft spot in my heart for veterans. The biggest soft spot I have is for the veterans and their families who deployed for a 12-month rotation and were told about 6 months in that you were going to stay for 15. Some of those soldiers did not survive months 13, 14, and 15. And that's a criminal act. And I don't mind telling people that my opponent voted for that war after he stood in front of me and my students in 2002 in a little theater in Montclair Memorial and said, "As the resolution now stands, I cannot support it." And he went back to Washington, stuck his finger in the air, and voted for it. The good news is after 13 years of obfuscating and all kinds of other big words, he finally admitted regret. If you go to my Facebook post, I point out that the regret was not directed to the 4,500 dead American soldiers, 20,000 seriously wounded, $2 million spent, and unrest that will last for decades. It was basically a political regret. That did not obviously soothe me a bit. So anyway, that is a special video. We have a great relationship. I told my daughter back in November that I was thinking about doing this, and I was on the phone with her, and she paused for a little bit, and she said, "You know, in some ways you might have been preparing for this all your life." And I went, "Well, okay, sounds good." And the next thing she said was, "You could probably win." Now, I have to know that our relationship is not that, "Oh, daughter says, 'Go, Dad,' all the time." The last conversation I had with her about a big decision was moving my son back to our home in North Dakota for various reasons. And I told her what I was planning on doing, And her response was, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." So, you know, when she said, "You could probably win," well, whoa, okay, well, that's great. And then, of course, the last thing she said, "You do know that Mr. Kine signed off on my commission to the military academy at West Point, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, isn't that delicious?" Before I go on anymore, I thank all of the people that put this together and all the volunteers, and JD was up here and did such a wonderful job. A number of you are here. Again, yes, thank you. One of the things that I did not expect to experience in this campaign was pressure to win. I knew what I was getting into, and I was going to give it my best shot. And then about 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting, met with Beth Hartung here in town, and I drove back to Eau Claire that night, and all the way back, all I could think of was how many people have so vested themselves in my campaign. And I don't know what I was expecting when I got into it, but it just seemed like they didn't put pressure on me. All of a sudden, I started to put pressure on myself. That pressure was lifted significantly when I'm standing in a vacant lot in Stevens Point, drenched in sweat, knocking on doors. It's the 29th of July. Important date in my life. Phone rings from Mr. Hightower's travel secretary, and she says, "Jim is coming." Yeah. I made knocking on doors the rest of the day real easy, Mr. Hightower. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. So you can't, I mean, there's so many people, and I suppose I should thank all 10 of my full-time campaign volunteers. Three?
Part-time.
Part-time?
60 hours.
Well, the book says you can't do this with 3 part-time campaign workers.
Full-time heart.
Okay, thank you. No, we have a grassroots campaign that we launched at my kitchen table, and I would thank my campaign treasurer, Steve Wagner, who bailed me out when we were crashing and burning because we didn't have a treasurer, and he's down here taking pictures. Jody jumped on the bandwagon after the Bernie phenomena swept through western Wisconsin, and then of course I have my ramrod, Steve Carlson, who's been living in my basement for a year. And has been driving this train. You know, it's really been quite remarkable. It was about a year ago, actually, almost a year ago to the day, that we sat in my screen porch and we had a cold Wisconsin beverage, and you know, all of a sudden the topic shifted to challenging Ron Kind, and we debated that over a couple of beers, over a couple of evenings, and I will write a book on this experience. And I have the first chapter titled, and the first chapter of my memoir says, "How hard can this blankety blank be?" Turns out that it's pretty hard, but for the young people that are in the audience, I'll tell you this. First of all, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I am retired. I can devote a full-time job to this. Many people who try to challenge an incumbent have a job and a family, and my family's moved away, and I can really do that. So I understand that. I have a little, you know, significantly a unique situation here for challenging an 18-year incumbent with $2 million. But yeah, it's hard work. I've enjoyed it immensely, almost all the time. And the thing that I would say to young people in the audience is that run for something.
Yes.
Run for city commission. Run for the school board. Be a county supervisor. Run for something. And yes, it's going to be hard work. It's going to be a pain in the butt. But here's the thing that I can offer. You're going to have the best time of your life. And that's worth doing it all by itself, besides possibly changing our stars a little bit. So I really appreciate all the help I've got, and I just have been having a great time. Now, most of you know that I'm a retired history teacher, and I was criticized on a radio show early in this campaign by a man who called in and criticized my background in history as qualifications for Congress. And I responded into the microphone. I said, because the caller implied that you should have some economics background, And I responded into the microphone. I said, at the top-level economics degrees from prestigious universities all over the country, everybody working at Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers, and they crashed the economy with it. So I tend to think that maybe a little bit of history should apply when you start to pass legislation like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And when you start to pass legislation that affects the economy and you completely forget what happened because it does not fit with your worldview, and that worldview is to simply make more money for a few at the top. Right. So I promise you, there'll be no piece of legislation, one that passes my desk that doesn't get read before I vote on it. And one of the great ironies of this whole thing is my opponent criticized soon-to-be Senator Feingold for being against the TPP before he read it. This is 98-1 Russ. He reads legislation before he votes on it. The great irony of that whole statement was, to me, that my opponent voted to fast-track the Trans-Pacific Partnership before the entire 6,000 pages had been released for consumption. So in effect, he voted for legislation before he read it. He didn't do his homework. He should not get a passing grade. The other great irony for me in all the things that he has tried to say about the TPP, I had a real flashback to it. I was getting this question all the time, what do you say about TPP? What do you mean? Well, kind of isn't saying much about it. But then it occurred to me that when he did start to speak about it, his language is almost identical. And I would challenge you to go back and look in the archives and see what he said about his vote for the war, especially after it started turning sour in 2004 and 2005. And the language that he uses is identical to the language of the TPP, that he uses for the TPP. We just don't know enough. If we knew more, we would know what we're talking about. We're just anti the TPP. We're just anti the war. We don't have anything to offer to change it. And I say, no. Excuse me, Mr. Kine. The burden's on you. You are a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Give me some bullet points. Show me what it's supposed to do. Teach me something, Mr. Representative. Don't just criticize me for not being able to read when I can read, and not being able to think about what I'm reading and come up with my own ideas. No, we can do much better than that. A little bit of history on the side here, just for the fun of it, and I can't help but feel something here, because I think historically on everything I do. Exactly 100 years ago this fall, in my old home state of North Dakota, there was a prairie fire. A couple of farmers, using the internet of its time, that would be called a Model T, drove around North Dakota and signed up farmers, and they joined a new political party called the Nonpartisan League. It's an interesting story if you look it up. That Nonpartisan League, overnight, relatively speaking, in November of 16, won every state office in North Dakota except one. They didn't win the treasurers. In 1918, they won every state office. Out of that revolution came the State Bank of North Dakota, which meant that in 2008, when Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs crashed the economy, North Dakota's money was safely ensconced in a bank that was well run, and it did not fall apart. Okay? There was another piece of legislation they rammed through, and that was to build an elevator, grain handling facility, and flour mill in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Well, the reason they built that was because the corporations, sound familiar, were ripping those working class people off. They were simply stealing a significant percentage of the grain from those farmers, and the shippers in Duluth every year were shipping millions of more bushels than they bought because they were being ripped off. That state mill and elevator still exists. And don't shy away from the word socialism, because the state bank and the state mill and elevator are socialist. And that's a good thing when it's well run, because it's democratic socialist. And I would challenge you, stop backing away from the word socialist when it gets thrown at you. Because you can say, yes, we have lots of good examples, like the U.S. Army, like the Interstate Highway System, like the Green Bay Packers, okay? And if you want to throw the state bank at them, go for it in North Dakota. I have one other new piece of information, and that is the people of my old home state initially put a law in place to ban corporate farming. It's been there for 100 years. A year ago, the legislature, now dominated by the same corporations that you know dominate our own, voted to allow corporate farming. Yeah. After over 100 years, well, you know what? The spirit is alive and well. And the spirit that was 100 years ago rose up and they initiated legislation, and the people of North Dakota voted on it, and they hammered it 70-30. There's no CAFOs in North Dakota. There is good news out there. Sometimes we get down, we forget that, and there is good news out there. Second thing I want to bring up historically is this. It's 100 years since Jeannette Rankin became our first woman elected to Congress. That deserves a round of applause. Yeah. And you know what Jeannette Rankin did on her first vote when she got to Congress? She voted against war. Now, there's probably a reason why our corporate media does not celebrate Jeannette Rankin, and my guess would be that that anti-war vote ranks right up there. Jeannette lived a ripe old age, and she was a leader in the Equal Rights Amendment. By the way, of the women and girls in the audience, let's not stop fighting for the ERA. We can bring that back as well. And of course, it's Wisconsin, so I can't not mention, in large part, one of the reasons that I'm allowed to be on this stage. And that's Robert M. LaFollette, Fightin' Bob. It's about 100 years ago right now, we're having a culmination of a long struggle led by Fightin' Bob. It gave us all kinds of things. The list is like this long, and most of you have heard it already. But the thing that strikes me as interesting right now is the primary. And Fightin' Bob fought to give us a primary election to take power back from the bosses. Now, I have to tell you this. When the President of the United States is campaigning against me, I say, feather, meet cap. And when an email comes out from my own city's Democratic headquarters saying that every Democrat in the state and every Democrat in the 3rd Congressional District has endorsed my opponent, I say the same thing. Somebody must have noticed. And here's the thing. It's audacious what my small band of merry people and myself has accomplished at this point, but we have gotten noticed. Because if we were nobody, they wouldn't be doing that, would they? No. And so we have a primary election. You have an opportunity to cast your vote against an establishment. And you know what? Please check me out. Because I'm a pretty damn good Democrat. I'm a pretty damn good populist. And when I hear things said, I said, yeah, I'm going to be on the proper side of these issues. I got to tell you a quick story here. I'm going to wrap this up a little bit, I suppose, but way back in 1975, this is a favorite story of mine, so bear with me. Way back in 1975, I'm walking down the fairway, not the fairway, the midway of a carnival with my buddies, and we're hearing the carnival barker yell, "Come and see the world's tallest man. Come and see the tallest man in the world. Step right up, step right up." Now my buddies look up at me and they go, "Dude, somebody taller than you." And I say, "Nobody's taller than me," okay? They said, "Well, let's go see the tallest man in the world." They said, "No, last year I was at this fair and I supposedly saw the tallest woman in the world. It turned out to be a cardboard skeleton. And I'm not paying my money to see a cardboard skeleton again." See, I was a critical thinker even way back then. And so my buddies Lee and Norby go, "No, come on, you're just cheap." And I said, "Yes, I am. I'm not spending a quarter on that." Well, they coerced me, so we went into this tent with about 20 other gullible people. We're standing there and we hear this carnival barker talk about this exotic king of a foreign land. I think it was Iowa. You know, when you're in North Dakota, I was a long ways away. And gives this great build-up, and they open this curtain, and to my surprise, there's a human being there. So, hey, it's not a cardboard skeleton. And he gives some more build up, and this guy stands up and full height, stretches up, and we go, whoa, this is awesome. He's really tall. And there's an audible gasp in the tent. And he reaches up and he puts his hand up on the tent. He can touch the top of the tent. And I'm standing there and I'm looking around and I follow the line of the tent back and go, oh, wait a second. I can do that too. And there's people standing next to me looking at that and going, whoa, you must be the tallest man in the world. I said, well, now I can say I've seen what is supposed to be the tallest man in the world, and I can honestly say that I'm at least as tall or taller than he was. Now, it was a great optical illusion. He was wearing vertical stripes, platform shoes, slope stage. I got my quarter for the optical illusion. The reason I bring this story up is after my buddies and I walked out of the tent and we walked out to smell the popcorn and the fried everything and past certain rides, a little bit of vomit, we realized that, you know what, it was an optical illusion, but in fact we got lied to. And I've always used that story to teach critical thinking, because without thinking about things, you get lied to very easily. So what's this have to do with our political system right now? I argue it's the same thing. We have ALEC, we have the Chamber of Commerce doing a full court press on the TPP. And they're telling us that everything's going to be fine. Like they told us with NAFTA, everything's going to be fine. It's going to lead to job creation. We missed the part about the loss of 75,000 jobs. But what you're looking at and what you hear from Congress so often is just the illusion. And the illusion of prosperity and the illusion of peace. If we bomb more, we'll get peace.
Right.
Oh, I don't know. There's sometimes you've got to step back and say, I don't, please, wear the vertical stripes and the platform shoes. At least it would be more entertaining to look at. But it is an illusion that they're giving us, and we have to fight back against that illusion. We just can't put up with it anymore because we've been down this road for something like 30 years. 40 years. Remember trickle down? You want to talk about an illusion? Even the people that created trickle down have admitted, whoops, it didn't work. What are you going to do? So here's the situation. Talk to people in my age group and older, and they say, you know what are we in this fight for? Well, you know why we're in this fight. You're in this fight because you remember that when you had a minimum wage when you were a kid, adjusted for inflation, it was $15 an hour. You remember that education wasn't going to bankrupt you. You weren't going to come out of a situation after going to college and, maybe never be able to pay it off. If you needed health care, you could get it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't free, but it was doable. You probably knew somebody, or maybe were, a member of a union, getting good pay, which elevated the entire community around you. You remembered beating a megalomaniac like Richard Nixon post-Vietnam and driving him from office because of people actually paying attention and ending what was called an endless war, with President Johnson and President Nixon saying, we'll never leave. Just like today. Well, we left. Okay? You remember that. And I know you want that for your future generations. I know that for the younger people here, when we get right down to it, why are you going to stay in this fight? You're going to stay in this fight because what are you going to tell your children 30 and 40 years from now? You're going to look at them and you're going to say, yeah, in the early part of this century, I got in the fight. So that means that here I am. Social Security has been fixed. It is good. It means I don't have to worry about poverty. I got into this fight because when you were sick, we provided health care for everybody because I loved you. Not because of how much money I had in the bank or how far I had to go into debt to provide you health care. We provided a public school system for you, where the principals stand in front of the schoolhouse door and they welcome everybody, regardless of ability or funds. And then you can go on to college, and we welcome you there as well. And you're not going to come out with a mortgage and no house. We remember the time when we have people in the cities in 2016 who can't drink their water. And we cleaned it up because water Clean water and clean air are not negotiable as a business expense. Your corporation does not get to say, oh, we get to pollute this much. No, we stopped that. You remember that an energy boom post-World War II spurred the middle class. Well, we can do it again. We did, and you'll tell your children. Clean, green energy. Because a massive spill of solar energy is simply called a very, very nice day. And we're going to provide that for you. We stopped the Trans-Pacific Partnership and stopped the offshoring of jobs and depressing of wages so that we can come around again and start to build the middle class that we know that we deserve. We stopped the greed that is so dominant in Congress, where our congressional delegations frequently spend almost all their time raising money and not writing legislation. It's written by the corporations and it's passed by our Congress. Then we got in the game. We got in the game because we knew it was a game that we could win. It was a game that we had to win. There's a song, I'll close with this, a song, actually it was the first CD I bought when I moved to Wisconsin in 1997. It's the Wallflowers, it's One Headlight. And there's a line in there that I've adapted and adopted for me a little bit. And the line of the song says, we ran until we're out of breath. We ran until there was nothing left. We hit the edge, but it's just our window ledge. Well, my edge is Tuesday. Okay? I need you to call your friends and bring 10 people along to a party on the 9th. And we can pull off what will be historically, a shocking upset of a powerful incumbent. But when I look through that window, I tend to see a very bright future. Because I know there are people out there who have been fighting longer than I've been fighting, and who have the best interests in mind for their children. And that for everything you have done, and for everything that I can see you doing through that window, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and we will meet again. Thank you.